Welcome back, the followers of Stoic wisdom by Zeno. Ever wonder why some people avoid you without saying a word? Why your presence seems to make others uncomfortable, or worse, dismiss you altogether? It's like there's a subtle, invisible wall between you and the people around you, and you can't figure out why. Here's the cold truth. We all have habits that make people look at us differently, that chip away at our respect and reputation without us even realizing it. But here's the kicker. It's not your appearance, your salary, or your social media following. It's your behavior. It's the way you speak, the way you act, and the habits you've let slide over time. Imagine this. You've built a beautiful house brick by brick, only to find out someone's been secretly pouring sand into the foundation. Slowly but surely, it begins to crumble. That's what these habits do to your relationships, your image, and your life. They're the hidden cracks in your foundation, making people question your character, your maturity, and your worth. And here's the thing, most of us don't even see the damage happening. You don't get a second chance to make a first impression, but you do get a chance to fix the one that's already been made. Today, we're calling out those 6 habits that make people silently turn away from you. And let me tell you, cut them out now, or they'll destroy everything you've worked for, bit by bit. Are you ready to face the truth? So, are you ready to take control of your habits before they take control of you? It's time to stop letting these invisible walls dictate your life. The first step to change is awareness. And now that you know, it's time to act. If you're committed to cutting out these toxic habits and becoming the best version of yourself, hit that like button and subscribe to Stoic Wisdom by Zeno. We're all on this journey to self-mastery, and trust me, what you do today shapes who you become tomorrow. Let's grow together. Number 1. Why gossiping is like poisoning your own well. We all do it, don't lie. The moment you hear something juicy, it's almost irresistible. A little gossip here, a little, "Did you hear about so-and-so there?" It feels harmless. In fact, it feels almost good in the moment. You get to feel in the loop, like you're part of the elite group that's in on the latest dirt. But what you don't realize is that every time you gossip, you're poisoning your own well. Slowly, quietly, and with devastating results. You might be sitting there thinking, "What's the big deal? I'm just having a little fun. Everyone does it." And you're right. Everyone does it. But here's the thing, just because everyone's doing something doesn't mean it's right, or that it's not quietly eating away at your relationships. It's like smoking. Everyone does it at some point, but the more you do it, the worse the consequences become, until one day you're alone, standing in a room full of empty chairs, wondering where it all went wrong. When you gossip, you're not just sharing information, you're eroding trust. And here's the kicker. While you're busy telling everyone else's stories, you're avoiding your own. Gossip acts like a shield, a clever distraction from your own flaws, your own struggles, your own life. It's a way to mask the things you're not ready to face. But what you fail to see is that by talking about others, you stop growing yourself. You've built an invisible barrier, and every time you gossip, you're reinforcing that wall. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, gossip isn't always bad. It's just harmless chit-chat, right? Sure, it starts off as harmless. A little chat about a colleague's new relationship or a friend's failed diet attempt. But here's where the line gets blurry. It doesn't stay harmless for long. One small comment leads to another, and before you know it, you're sitting there, adding fuel to a fire that wasn't even your business to begin with. You're watching something that wasn't your problem grow into a massive mess that's now your problem. And let's be honest, How do you feel when the tables are turned, when you're the one being talked about behind closed doors? Imagine the uncomfortable shift when you realize people are sharing your personal mistakes, laughing at your struggles, or speculating about your private life. It doesn't feel good, does it? Now, take a step back and ask yourself, why would you do this to someone else, knowing how bad it feels? Why create the same discomfort for someone else when you wouldn't want it for yourself? Gossip doesn't just affect the person you're talking about, it affects you too. The more you gossip, the more people start to see you as untrustworthy. And trust, once lost, is incredibly hard to regain. Here's a cold truth. Every time you spread someone else's drama, people wonder what you're saying about them when they're not around. They'll look at you with suspicion, questioning whether they're the next target of your conversation. And when that trust starts to crumble, so do your relationships. Soon enough, your phone stops ringing. People stop sharing their thoughts with you. And you wonder why no one is willing to get close anymore. But in reality, you did it to yourself. Think about it this way. When you gossip, you're betting your reputation on a fleeting moment of attention. You're sacrificing the real connections you could have for the shallow thrill of being in the know. But here's the thing about that kind of attention. It's hollow. It's a sugar rush, one that feels sweet for a second, but leaves you with a bitter aftertaste. You might think you're gaining something by sharing the latest scandal, but what you're actually doing is losing something far more valuable: respect. If you want to truly connect with people, you need to stop using gossip as a bridge. It's not a way to build relationships, it's a way to break them. Authentic relationships are built on trust, and you can't build anything solid on the shaky foundation of gossip. When you stop gossiping, you stop distancing yourself from the real conversations, the ones that matter. You create space for deeper, more meaningful connections to grow. You stop distracting yourself from your own issues by focusing on everyone else's mistakes. And instead, you start dealing with your own life. Let's get real for a second. If you want to stop gossiping, you've got to be brave. The next time someone leans in and starts to whisper about the latest drama, be the one to say, "Nah, I'm good." I know it's not easy, and I know it might feel awkward at first. But trust me, the more you practice saying no to gossip, the more respect you'll earn from the people around you. And here's the kicker. People will start to trust you. They'll start to see you as someone who's safe, someone who doesn't talk behind people's backs. That's a reputation you can be proud of. You might be thinking, but what if I miss out on all the fun? Here's the hard truth. The fun you think you're missing out on is the kind of fun that only lasts until the next drama pops up. It's like riding a wave that looks great from a distance, but when you're on it, it just crashes. Real fun, the kind that's built on honesty and trust, never leaves you with regret. And real relationships? They'll never leave you feeling alone. They'll fill you up in a way that gossip never could. So here's the bottom line. Stop poisoning your well. Stop using gossip as your escape and start focusing on what really matters. The next time someone comes to you with the latest tea, be the one who shuts it down with grace. Be the person who chooses respect over drama, honesty over hearsay. The true connection comes from within, not from the mess you create in other people's lives. Number 2, why being passive-aggressive is like playing with fire. Ever wonder why people start avoiding you when you think you're being subtle? You know the feeling. When you're upset but don't say a word, just drop a hint here, throw a look there, or send a message with a carefully placed sarcastic remark. You want the other person to feel guilty without ever saying it outright. It feels like you're avoiding the fight, doesn't it? But in reality, you're just playing with fire. Eventually, that fire will burn everything down. And here's why. Passive aggression is one of those habits that looks like a small issue, but has the power to destroy relationships in ways you never see coming. It's the art of saying one thing, but meaning another. It's like planting seeds of resentment under the surface and then wondering why things start to rot. You think you're keeping the peace by not confronting the problem, but you're actually letting it grow into something far worse. Here's the brutal truth. No one wins when you keep your feelings bottled up and hope someone magically reads your mind. It's like holding a grudge while smiling on the outside. Eventually, that smile fades, and the resentment you've been hiding starts to show in other ways. Passive aggression isn't protecting you from conflict. It's an escape route for your fear of facing uncomfortable emotions. But here's the catch. You're not fooling anyone. People see through it. They feel it, and they start to back away. The problem is, you end up carrying that emotional weight alone. Think about it this way. You've probably been in that situation where someone says they're fine, but their body language tells a different story. You've seen the clenched jaw, the cold stare, the snappy responses. You know something's wrong, but you're not sure what. How can anyone solve the problem when you won't even tell them what it is? It's like trying to fix a broken pipe, but refusing to tell the plumber where the leak is. The water keeps flowing, and your frustration keeps building. One of the most common passive-aggressive behaviors is the silent treatment. You've been there, right? You ignore the person who upset you, hoping they'll magically figure out why you're angry and apologize. But the only thing that happens is that you both get further apart. The person on the receiving end may be left wondering, did I do something wrong? What did I miss? Meanwhile, you're stuck stewing in your emotions, holding on to the idea that your silence will make them realize the depth of your pain. But silence is a poison to relationships. It only creates confusion and distance. Another classic example of passive aggression is the backhanded compliment. You've probably heard it or maybe even used it yourself. Wow, that's a nice dress. You look almost normal for once. It sounds like a compliment, but it's a disguised insult. You think you're getting away with it because the words seem nice, but the intention is clear. You want to hurt someone while hiding behind a veil of politeness. It's like dropping a rock into a pond, thinking it won't make a splash, but the ripples spread further than you expected. People feel the tension, and trust me, they'll remember it. They just won't trust you the same way anymore. And let's be real for a second. You might tell yourself that passive aggression is easier than having a confrontation. You might think, why cause drama when I can just drop a hint and let them figure it out? But here's the truth. When you don't directly address the problem, you're actually avoiding growth. Avoiding conflict means avoiding resolution. It's like putting a band-aid on a wound and pretending it'll heal on its own while the infection spreads beneath the surface. Eventually it festers and can become far worse than it ever had to be. You know that feeling when you try to fix a problem without actually talking about it? It's like trying to build a house on a shaky foundation, hoping it won't collapse. You might patch it up with more passive-aggressive behavior, but that foundation will always be unstable. Eventually, everything will crumble under the weight of all that unspoken resentment. And here's the kicker. Passive aggression isn't a sign of strength, it's a sign of fear. You're afraid to face the discomfort of a real conversation, so you hide behind indirect remarks and gestures. But in doing so, you're not protecting yourself. You're trapping yourself in a cycle of frustration. You expect others to read your mind, but people can only guess for so long before they walk away, tired of the emotional games. And then you wonder why they don't care anymore. I learned this the hard way. I used to be a master of passive-aggressive texts. Someone would cancel plans with me, and instead of saying I'm disappointed, I'd send something like, "Must be nice to have so much free time." It wasn't direct, it wasn't honest, and it wasn't helpful. It was just a way for me to hold on to my pride while still letting my frustration out. But over time, I noticed something. I stopped having deep conversations with people. No one felt safe enough to be real with me because I wasn't being real with them. One day, a friend pulled me aside and told me, "You're not doing anyone any favors by being passive-aggressive. If you can't be honest about what's bothering you, how can you expect anyone else to care?" That hit me like a ton of bricks. I was so busy hiding behind indirect comments and awkward silences that I had pushed away the people I cared about the most. I was the problem, not them. Here's the good news. Once I started being more direct with my feelings, things began to change. The tension I had been holding in for so long started to dissolve. The relationships that felt strained began to heal. It wasn't easy at first. Vulnerability is always a challenge, but it was worth it. People started respecting me more, not because I was perfect, but because I was real. And guess what? The world didn't fall apart when I spoke my truth. In fact, it got a whole lot better. The next time you feel that urge to say something passive-aggressive, take a step back. Ask yourself, what am I really trying to say? Instead of throwing indirect jabs, try saying what's on your mind in a respectful and honest way. It may feel uncomfortable, but that discomfort will lead to growth, and people will respect you for it. Trust me, there's more power in vulnerability than there ever will be in hiding behind passive-aggressive words. If you want respect, you've got to give it. And if you want true connections, you've got to be willing to face the difficult conversations head-on, without the games. Life doesn't get easier by avoiding conflict. It gets better by facing it with courage and honesty. So, stop playing with fire before it burns everything to the ground. What do you think about this approach of cutting out passive aggression and being more direct? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're ready to level up your mindset, don't forget to like and subscribe to Stoic Wisdom by Zeno. Number 3. When you don't take care of yourself, people notice, and it speaks volumes. There are things we shouldn't have to say. Hygiene, for example. It's one of those basic human practices that should come naturally, like brushing your teeth or taking a shower. Yet, somehow, some people just forget. And let me tell you, when you neglect the basics, it doesn't just affect you. It sends a message to everyone around you. A message you might not even be aware you're sending. It's like walking into a room with your shirt on inside out. You don't need anyone to point it out for you to feel the judgment in the air. It's an invisible but undeniable signal that says, I don't care enough to pay attention. And when it comes to hygiene, that message hits harder than you think. People start wondering, what else are they neglecting? If you can't manage the small stuff, how can anyone trust you with bigger responsibilities? Think about it. When was the last time you felt confident in someone who couldn't even take care of their own body? It's uncomfortable, isn't it? The fact that personal hygiene is so tied to how people perceive us might feel unfair, but it's reality. We live in a world where first impressions can make or break opportunities, and one of the easiest ways to ruin that first impression is to show up looking and smelling like you just rolled out of a dumpster. I'm not here to shame anyone, but to wake you up to the fact that how you treat yourself is a direct reflection of how you value yourself. I get it. Life gets busy. There are days when you feel overwhelmed with responsibilities, deadlines, or personal struggles. You might convince yourself that hygiene is the last thing on your mind when your mental health feels like it's spiraling. Trust me, I've been there. I know how it feels to be so buried in work, stress, or anxiety that a shower feels like a luxury. But here's the harsh truth. Neglecting basic hygiene isn't just about missing a shower or skipping a toothbrush. It's about telling the world, I'm not worth taking care of. Think about the last time you encountered someone who had poor hygiene, unbrushed teeth, unkempt hair, a body odor that could clear a room. Did you feel comfortable around them? Most likely no. You might have tried to pretend like it wasn't a big deal, but in reality, your mind was racing, thinking, what's going on with them? Are they okay? And if that's how you feel about others, how do you think they feel about you when you aren't taking care of yourself? A lack of hygiene doesn't just make people recoil in disgust. It opens up a deeper level of concern. People start wondering if there's something more going on. Are you struggling mentally? Are you too depressed to care? Suddenly your hygiene becomes a silent flag, a signal that something might be wrong, even if you don't realize it. It's the invisible cry for help that many won't voice, but that people notice all the same. Here's a metaphor for you. Imagine a car, a beautiful, top-of-the-line vehicle. Now, imagine leaving it out in the rain, never bothering to clean it or take it for maintenance. The engine starts to sputter, the paint begins to chip, and soon enough, the car doesn't even run anymore. That's your body, your mind, and your self-worth. When you neglect yourself, you start to deteriorate, and the world notices that wear and tear. We've all been guilty of letting self-care slide during tough times. But here's the thing, it's during those moments, more than any other, that we need to care for ourselves the most. Your body is the only place you truly live, and treating it with respect isn't just about looking good. It's about feeling good too. And it's about respecting yourself enough to say, I'm worth the effort. I remember a time when I let myself slip. I was overwhelmed with work, life, and everything in between, and the last thing I wanted to do was care about how I looked. But what I didn't realize was that my lack of care was seeping into every part of my life. My energy was low, my confidence was shot, and the people around me noticed. A close friend pulled me aside and said something that hit me like a ton of bricks. Are you okay? You've been looking a little off lately. It was a wake-up call. I had let my mental struggles dictate my physical self-care, and, in turn, it was affecting how others saw me. In moments like this, it's easy to think hygiene is trivial. We have bigger fish to fry, right? But neglecting the basics is never trivial. It's the foundation of how you show up in the world. If you're not putting in the effort to care for yourself, people will wonder if you're even capable of handling life's bigger challenges. When I made the conscious decision to start taking better care of myself, by showering regularly, brushing my teeth, eating better, it was like a switch flipped. Suddenly, I felt better. I felt stronger, more confident, and more in control of my life. And more importantly, the people around me noticed. They treated me differently because I was showing up differently. Let's get real for a second. Good hygiene isn't just about impressing others. It's about respecting yourself. It's the first step in taking control of your life. It's the smallest gesture that can have the biggest impact on your mindset. Because when you take the time to care for your body, you're telling yourself that you matter. You're telling yourself that you're worth the effort. And when you believe that about yourself, others will believe it too. So, the next time you're tempted to skip the shower, or when you can't be bothered to brush your teeth, remember this. Taking care of yourself isn't a chore, it's a privilege. The world already gives you enough challenges to face. Don't let neglecting your basic needs be one of them. You're worth more than that. And if you're still on the fence about making that change, here's something to think about. People are always watching, and they're taking notes. The way you treat yourself tells others exactly how you expect to be treated. If you want respect, if you want to be taken seriously, then you need to show the world you respect yourself first. So next time you feel like skipping the basics, remember this. Hygiene is a reflection of self-worth. If you don't think you're worth the effort, how can anyone else? Number 4, stop passing the buck. Own your mistakes or stay stuck in the mud. You know that person, the one who's always got an excuse ready. The one who can't take responsibility for anything, no matter how obvious it is that they messed up. Oh, the printer was broken. My Wi-Fi cut out. I didn't know it was due today. We've all been there, some of us more than we'd like to admit. But here's the deal. If you're constantly passing the buck, you're setting yourself up for failure. Every time you dodge accountability, you dig yourself deeper into a hole, one that's tough to crawl out of. It's like driving a car with a cracked windshield, hoping you won't crash because you're too busy blaming the road for being too rough. At first, it feels easier to point fingers, to shift the blame elsewhere. But in the long run, it's just a distraction from the real problem. You. And I get it. Owning up to your mistakes feels like swallowing a bitter pill. But here's a hard truth. Growth starts the moment you admit you're wrong. As the ancient philosopher Seneca once said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." What does that mean for you? It means the fear of admitting you messed up is often worse than the actual consequences of owning up to it. When you refuse to take responsibility, you're not protecting yourself. You're locking yourself in a cage of excuses. Every time you dodge accountability, you deny yourself the chance to improve. I've been that person too. In school, I was the king of excuses. My homework was lost, or I didn't get the email about the project, or, my personal favorite, I forgot it was due. But guess what happened? My teachers didn't see me as clever. They saw me as unreliable. And that's what people think of you when you constantly deflect responsibility. You're unreliable. You become the person people hesitate to trust because they know you'll always find a way to avoid the blame. So why is it so hard to own up? Simple. Pride. Nobody likes admitting they're wrong, but think about it. How many people do you respect because they've never made a mistake? Not many. In fact, you probably respect those who own up to their faults, who don't shy away from saying, "I messed up, but I'll do better next time." That's the kind of person people trust. It's not about being perfect. It's about being real. Here's a challenge for you. The next time you mess up, stop with the excuses. Look the situation in the eye, take a deep breath, and own it. It's going to feel uncomfortable. It might sting for a minute, but trust me, that's where the real growth happens. When you take responsibility, you give yourself the power to change. You stop being a victim of your own mistakes and become the master of your future. Number 5. Complaining. The quickest way to poison your own well. You know that one person, the one who can turn a sunny day into a thunderstorm with just a few words. The one who can walk into a room and instantly shift the mood just by complaining about the smallest things. It's like they carry an invisible rain cloud with them wherever they go. You've probably met them, or worse, maybe you've been them. We all have that friend who can't seem to stop nitpicking about every little thing, from the weather to the coffee being too hot, to the traffic being too slow. But here's the kicker. It's not just annoying, it's draining, it's toxic, and in the end, it's isolating. Constant complaining is like watching someone fill a well with poison, then asking why nobody drinks from it. At first, it might seem harmless, even cathartic, venting out frustration, letting off steam. But over time, it erodes your own peace of mind and the people around you. Like an infection, it spreads and takes over. The truth is, complaining doesn't solve problems. It creates more of them. You focus on what's wrong, but you miss out on the opportunities to find what's right. Instead of seeking solutions, you're too busy marinating in negativity, making it worse. Let's face it, nobody wants to be around someone who always seems to find fault in everything. It's like being trapped in a conversation where the only thing you hear is a broken record of complaints. When you complain, you invite others to feel as miserable as you do, but instead of finding support, you're met with distance. People don't want to be around negativity. They want optimism, or at the very least, someone who's not always focused on the storm. They want to share in the sunshine, not hide from the downpour. And here's the big question: why do we complain in the first place? It feels good in the moment, right? Like a quick fix for a deep-seated frustration. But in reality, it's just a crutch. It's a way of avoiding taking responsibility for what you can actually change. Every time you complain, you give your power away. You let the weather, the traffic, the annoying co-worker, or whatever else stands in your way take control of your emotions. You're letting external factors dictate your mood instead of taking charge of it yourself. He who is not a good servant will never be a good master. It's a Stoic truth that reminds us we're only as powerful as our ability to control ourselves. Next time you feel the urge to complain, stop and ask yourself, can I change this? Is this worth my energy? If not, let it go. And if you can change it, do something about it instead of wasting breath on frustration. Life is too short to focus on the bad. It's all about shifting your focus to what's good. And if you can't find anything good in a situation, create it. That's where the real power lies. If you're done drowning in negativity and ready to start turning things around, hit the like button and subscribe to Stoic Wisdom by Zeno. We're here to rise above the complaints and build a life of purpose, growth, and peace. Number 6. Stop making excuses. Own up or stay stuck. You know the drill. Something goes wrong, and instead of owning up to it, you're quick to blame the weather, the Wi-Fi, or that annoying co-worker who just can't seem to get it right. Sound familiar? Well, here's the deal. Excuses aren't just a way out. They're chains that keep you stuck in the same place. Every time you point the finger at something external, you're giving away your power to improve. The more you do it, the harder it is to break free. Picture this. You're in a race, but instead of running forward, you're dragging a weight behind you. That weight is your excuses. They slow you down, make the path harder to navigate, and all the while, you're convincing yourself that it's not your fault. It's like trying to climb a mountain while complaining about the weather. Sure, the conditions aren't perfect, but the mountain isn't going anywhere. But here's the truth. Excuses are the refuge of those too scared to face their flaws. If you're always blaming someone else or something else, you'll never have the chance to look inward and figure out where you could have done better. It's easy to point fingers, but it takes strength to say, I messed up and I'm going to fix it. Maybe you're thinking, but what if it's really not my fault? Well, let me hit you with something real. Even when it's not entirely your fault, taking responsibility still gives you control. That's where real growth begins. When you stop making excuses, you stop being a passenger in your own life. You start driving the car, and guess what? The road ahead is suddenly clearer. When I was younger, I was a master of excuses. Missed deadlines. Oh, the printer was down. Failed an exam. The teacher just doesn't like me. But the more I dodged responsibility, the more my problems piled up. No one respects the person who always has an excuse, and worse, you lose respect for yourself. Excuses are a prison, and the key to the door is accountability. Here's a powerful quote to remember. He who is not a good servant will not be a good master. The first person you need to master is yourself. Once I started owning my mistakes, I realized I could actually learn from them. No more hiding behind excuses. I found freedom in honesty. So, the next time you're tempted to blame the universe, the boss, or that flat tire, ask yourself, what could I have done differently? The moment you stop shifting blame and take accountability is the moment your life starts to change. It's scary at first, no doubt. But trust me, owning your actions isn't just liberating. It's the gateway to earning respect, not just from others, but from yourself. And once you make that shift, the world around you shifts with it. No more excuses. It's time to own up, level up, and break free from the cycle of blame.